Good morning. If you have any chairs next to you that are vacant, please raise your hand. There's one. There's two in the front, maybe one more in the front. So if you're looking for a spot, don't be shy. Come to the front. You are in a good seat. As long as you can see the projection up there. So we set up this way for Sunday for our our kickoff, and we thought it would be a nice setup for today. And then I thought, we might have 80 people. So, so thank you for your flexibility. There are a few more chairs in the back. If you want to pull some from the pile, go ahead. We'll get started momentarily. We're waiting on one person to be available. We want to make sure your mic is on too. So.
Is my mic on? Nope. Can you hear me now? I'll shoot you that one, yeah. Okay. Thank you. No, this is awesome. Yeah, we tested it the other day. That doesn't mean I know what I'm doing. Okay, how's that?
It's not on.
It's not? Okay.
Not near your mouth.
Oh, my gosh.
I think, yeah, these go around, yep, and then over your ears like that.
Okay. Should I move closer to my mouth? Oh, can you hear me? Mom, can you hear me? Heidi? Heidi, can you hear me?
Can you hear in the back?
Heidi? Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, we're not ready yet. Oh no. Something bad happened. This is where we know our computers are listening to us, because right when you're ready. Nope, I'm not going to read the news. I already did. So while she's working on that, I'm going to say that these lovely shirts are for sale outside. I moved it somehow. Okay, that's good. I should hook this on me. Yeah. Okay. Is this going to work? Oh. Is it still working? All right. I'm really used to using my teacher voice, so this is a whole new thing for me. Erik, it's great to see you. Yes, one of my students at one time. Who here was a student of mine at one time? Who here had that? Somebody's not raising their hand. Who here had students in my class at one time? Thank you. So I taught in Hastings for 33 years and altogether for 39 years. And it was really a blessing to get to Hastings. It's been a great community. The school's been good to me. But Sarah has something to say.
Oh, yeah. So I'll keep it brief, but please welcome Erik Pearson from Montana. So Erik has been sick, but he is in voice. So, it's wonderful to have him here. And we are the sprinkles and the frosting to what Spencer is prepared today. So we're just adding a little music. So the first piece we're doing is Soiree Polka. We've played it here before, probably a couple different times. It is from the Civil War era. And since the Guardian Angels Church was built in 1865, it seemed only appropriate that we open with this number. So please enjoy. Do you want a chair to sit on when we're...
Nope.
Okay, you're just going to stand there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a chair
I'll use
back
that
there.
chair over
Yep.
there.
Okay.
You know, there's a history to everything and lots of history to music. And you know, you got some good history geeks when they look up music from the time and do all that. So my name is Spencer Johnson. I taught school here for many years at the middle school. Presently, I'm the president of the Hastings Area Historical Society. And we have a meeting tonight at the Leduc House. It'd be the same talk, but if you're interested in that organization, that'd be great. So a year ago, Sarah approached me with the idea of being involved in this committee. It's been a real pleasure. This has been a really fun project to work on. I love old buildings and looking things up about them and exploring them, and it's been really, really nice. So, Guardian Angels Church, 160 years of tradition in Hastings. So here we've got a couple of different images, and I'm going to talk more about that first one. Oh, here's my pointer. Oh, it went off. Of course it went off. There it goes. Okay, it doesn't want to work now, so we'll get to it. Okay. So anyway, you know, the church was built back when we were barely a town, and it's evolved, and it's still here. It's had its ups and its downs, but it's a beautiful, beautiful space. A little bit about the founding of Hastings. When Hastings was first, well, I should go back a little bit. The land that we live on right now, before 1851, the Treaty of 1851, was all Native American land. The closest Indian village was Red Wing, and then South St. Paul. There was no Indian village here. This is an area where natives would come and gather different things. There was a prairie turnip and some other things. But in 1851, the government was planning to sign a treaty with the native, with the Dakota, both in Mendota, the Treaty of Mendota, and the Treaty of Traverse de Sioux, which today is St. Peter, Minnesota. They were trying to convince the native people to move on to reservations, assimilate into European American culture, start to farm. That was real problematic. But some of the major players in that were Henry Hastings Sibley, fur trader in Mendota, Alexis Bailey, yes, our Alexis Bailey, fur trader in Mendota, Alexander Faribault, and then his son, he had two sons, Henry Bailey, yeah. Henry Bailey was Bailey's son. I found this picture of the Minnesota Historical Society, founding of Hastings. I just put founding of Hastings in 1857. This is probably the earliest picture of our town taken, and I got to get this thing to work. So it's in the Historical Society. It's really about the size of a playing card, and it shows the river. I'm going to flip these around, see if that's going to work for me. Because on here is Vermilion, the town of, so the photo's probably taken from a steamboat. It's on a glass plate negative. It's not a tin type. It's probably an ambro type. I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff. Boy, this works so well at home. Okay, anyway, the large building in the center, that's a big sawmill. Thank you, Andy. Say, no, it looks like a bullet. Thanks. It works sometimes. It's a sawmill, and that's about where the confluence is today. And just off to the left of that, it's kind of hard to see in this image, that's Vermilion, and there's a little landing road that goes down to the river where there was a ferry. This is way before the spiral bridge. This is one of my favorite pictures of all. Hastings in 1867. Okay, all right. Yep, that's okay. Try. Yep, okay, just let it go. So these different fur traders, we'll see them in just a second. Henry Hastings Sibley, Alexander Faribault, Alexis Bailey, and his son Henry were speculating. So the treaty is going to be signed in 1851, and they were looking at, well, when the fur trade sort of wraps up, because the natives are going to be encouraged to farm in the European style. They did have their own farming. What's the next phase for these fur traders who had made quite a bit of money in the fur trade? And land speculation is going to be it. And a lot of them end up becoming attorneys so they can negotiate, because this is going to open up for settlement. So they sent Henry Bailey down here and to build a trading post in 1850. Again, there's no native villages that close, but that wasn't the point. It's kind of like an insider trading thing. And that little cabin was probably right behind our Lock and Dam restaurant. And if there's no pictures of it, there's not any archaeological record of exactly where it was, but that's my understanding of where it was. And in 1857, these four fur traders transferred this block that we're on to the Archdiocese for only $2. Here they are. We have Henry Hastings Sibley off to the left, Alexis Bailey off to the right, and then Alexander Fairbow is on this cabinet card, the gray one, and Henry Bailey, who he and his brother were both officers in the Civil War. He was a lieutenant. He's killed at the Battle of Nashville. He's buried at Bellwood Cemetery. All the Fairbows are buried in Faribault, near Faribault, and thank you. And then Sibley's buried in St. Paul, north of the capital, where a lot of people are buried. And Alexis Bailey's buried in Wabasha with two of his wives. All right, so why did Hastings succeed as a town in the 1850s? And we'll get back to Nininger in a minute. Unlike Nininger, first of all, we're on the river. So you can see on the bottom level there, it's from my 1867 bird's eye view map. There are a lot of steamboats, and that opening off to the left, that's where the marina is, the Cowtown Marina plans, and that is actually the mouth of the Vermilion River coming out there, one of the mouths. There's two of them. But we see there's a lot of steamboats, and everywhere from the marina all the way down to Lake Rebecca, it's low. You can unload a boat. It's a levee. Today it's Levee Park. And most river cities like St. Paul, St. Louis, et cetera, have levees where you could load and unload steamboats at that time. Also, right above that, the railroads came here. And William LeDuc was instrumental in bringing the railroads through Hastings, but when the railroads came, they came to Hastings. They did not come to Nininger. And Nininger does not have a levee. It's kind of high up on a bluff. There's one area you could get down to. And then again, here in this 1869, it's kind of hard to tell. It's 1859. That cabinet card up there, that is our big mill, okay? And at that time, it was built, European Americans are going to come flooding in here. They're going to farm. Wheat and corn at the time was the main thing. And we had a waterfall. Okay, we had a waterfall that's going to be able to be used by the farmers, and it's a really easy move, both on a railroad or on a wagon, to get that flour down to the steamboats and to move them off like that. One thing you don't see on this particular mill picture is a big outside water wheel. Both this one and the Ramsey Mill, which is down in the ravine near this in a park, both of those were set up so the water would go into the building and circulate turbines, and then you could use them in the wintertime if you kept it heated. And of course, we became the county seat. Now, Dakota County is a large county. We are not in the center of it, but politics as usual got it to be here. Notice on this one of the earlier photographs, this is an 1870s building, but the dome is different. Oh, thank you. Ooh, no, that's okay. I was really focused. Oh, it does. All right. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. I know mine will work at home. Maybe that's the thing. Okay, but yeah, this dome is different. Oh, no, it's not going to work with me. Okay. Must be me. All right, so Nininger, by the way, if you know where that is, Nininger Township, you go out past the hospital, that was going to be, Ignatius Donnelly and John Nininger thought, this is going to be the big thing. We're going to have this big town. I used to use this image, emigration up the Mississippi River, territory of Nininger. This was just a few months before we became a state, and they were really promoting this as this is going to be the hot spot. Didn't work out. The railroads didn't come. See, there's a train and a steamboat on there. The railroads didn't come, and the steamboat had a hard time landing. And I'm going to read this immigrant. An emigrant is somebody who moves within the country as opposed to an immigrant. This is the name of a new paper, the publication of which has been commenced at Nininger City, a new town just started in Minnesota Territory, central to the inhabited portion and on the south bank of the Mississippi River. The object of the paper is indicated by its title. It's printed one half in English, the other half in German, which tells you something. $2 per year, payable in advance. Who wants to go to Minnesota? It's rapidly filling up and may possibly be admitted to state during the present session. Unfortunately, Nininger did not work out really well. It's still with us, though. So this map, I love this map. I had a copy of this in my classroom. Bird's eye view in 1867. there were a lot of these around for different towns. St. Paul had one, Minneapolis has one, Red Wing has one, Prescott doesn't, unfortunately. That would be really fun. And in here you'll see, I'm going to try this again. Oh my God. All right. In there you'll see Lake Isabel off to the left. And again, you can see where the creek comes in there. That actually, Lake Isabel flows into that, as does the Vermilion. And then our town went pretty much from Lake Isabel up to Pine. This road on the right side is Pine Street, and up to 15th. That's the top of it right there. You will see Vermilion, and here you can kind of see, as I'm pointing to this, you can kind of see the landing road kind of across the trees. There are some buildings on the other side too, but the landing road is what Vermilion's going to be. There was an old Indian trail between here and Red Wing, and it keeps on going past town. If you had a better view of this, you would be able to see the mill is there, our big mill, and Leduc's house, et cetera, et cetera. This is a great, great source to see what our town is like. A lot of these buildings are still there, not all of them. And in the Pioneer Room over in City Hall, they have one where somebody had highlighted all the buildings that are still existing. All right, so close-up of this one. Here's our church, number 9, it's listed, and the one right next to it was probably built first. It was a dirt floor. This is Joseph Cretin. Think of Cretin Hall. Hastings Catholics petitioned Bishop Cretin to build a church. Cretin sent down a load of lumber by river, pilfered by locals at night. He sent more, and the church was built. It was 30 by 50, more like a shelter than a church. The first mass was on a dirt floor. So that would be the smaller building with the crucifix on the top. I think the other little building that my circle goes on was probably the school. Notice too, right by the word 5th Street, there's a lot of stuff back there. That's lumber. And there's a lot of the piles of lumber here. This map was made, it says in 1867, and it's very, very accurate, but not perfect. There are some speculations. I don't know that the tower and the crucifix were on here in 1867. It might have just been, speculation. But here's Joseph Cretin. And the first attempt, ground was broken in 1858, not for the church that we're in. It was going to be a 125 by 60 foundation. It was nicknamed the Cathedral, and I don't believe it was on this footprint. I think it was nearby. Some things are never clear when you do the research. And it was never finished. There were some issues. In November of 1859, the little wood frame church, again right next to the big one, was on fire, and they don't know. The reports it might have been arson. And Father McMahon was relieved over this question mark. He was the one that kind of started things, but things weren't really going with this big building project. So like anything, there's probably more than one thing, and then he's going to be replaced. In the hallway out here, and there's a different facade for part of the room that you're in. In the hallway out here is a cornerstone over there. It says 1865, okay? So anyway, it's kind of fun to see what else is around in the neighborhood. And my compatriot Heidi Langenfeld has worked out a really cool tour using parts of this map for some of this neighborhood to see what's still here. We'll get to that. So I went to the school's website and found out a little bit about the history of it here, and I'm going to read this. There's St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. Our roots in the Hastings community go all the way back to 1856. Guardian Angels, St. Boniface, Hastings Parochial, and St. Elizabeth Ann Seton schools are connected. We're all connected and share rich history. Bullet point number 1, there were 2 Catholic parishes in Hastings from the late 1800s to 1987. And when I first moved here, you had 2 choices. Guardian Angels Catholic School and Parish were started by the Irish immigrants in October of 1856 on the Feast of Guardian Angels. St. Boniface Catholic School and Parish were started by German immigrants in 1870. So St. Bonnie's not on that map. It's a little bit later. 1970, Guardian Angels School and St. Bonnie School merged into one school called the Hastings Parochial. I'm sure many of you remember that. In July 1st, 1987, the 2 parishes merged into one parish after the newest canonized American saint, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. Father Mertz, longtime pastor of Guardian Angels, was instrumental in presenting evidence for Elizabeth Ann Bailey Seton's sainthood and was present at her canonization in 1975. The parishes worshipped in the existing churches until our present church was built in 1994. For over 165 years, there's been a strong Catholic presence in Hastings, and has educated generations. So quite a few years ago, my mom and Cindy and I were on a kind of a Civil War trip in Virginia and Pennsylvania. We're driving down a state highway, and there was a big brown sign that says, visit the grave of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. So we pulled in there and saw where she's buried, right next to a big school. So some early accounts, and I should put a punch in here for the Pioneer Room. Over at City Hall, there's a research room that's staffed by volunteers, some of which are here, on Mondays from about, it's like 9 to 4 or 10 to 4. On Wednesdays, same hours. You can drop in there, do some local research, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of this information is there. Sometimes you have to be patient and go through files, but the ladies are very good at helping out. So some of the abstracts that go back mention Henry Hastings Sibley, Alexis Bailey, Henry Bailey, and William LeDuc. So there was a time in the early area we're talking about that Alexander Faribault and Alexis Bailey kind of had a falling out. They were related by marriage, but they had a little bit of a falling out. And Faribault's like, I'm going to go down. I'm going to start my own town in Faribault on the Cannon River. And LeDuc buys his quarter share of the town for about $4,000. So now he's a landowner here. Further down here, Alexis Bailey, Julia, Henry G. Bailey, that's the son Harriet, William G. LeDuc and Mary, and Henry Sibley and Sarah. 2, where it's being purchased by Augustine Ravoux, administrator of the estate of Reverend Joseph Cretan, Bishop of St. Paul, deceased. So we'll talk about both those priests in a minute, but they were the main people that got this thing going. So this one here was, again, a clipping from 1865. I love primary sources. And you have to be careful sometimes, and I know my newspaper guy is over here. Thanks for coming. But when you read things in the newspaper, sometimes the accuracy is not as accurate as we would like, but it's still a great primary source to get started with. And you always cross-reference your stuff. But June 20, 1865, new church. The Roman Catholics of this place and vicinity are proposing to erect a new church this season on Ramsey Street, a little east and near to the present one. Okay, so there was 2 of them. I mean, the wooden one. It's designed to be 100 feet in length with corresponding width of solid stone masonry and cut front. It will probably cost about $8,000 and be a great ornament to that part of the city. About 2,200 is already subscribed, which will note the Honorable Ignatius Donnelly gives $100, and that's, again, our Sage of Nininger. The old edifice will be removed back and used for a parish school. The building committee are messengers Dean, McHugh, Whaley, Miles. Is expected to break ground next month. Okay. So again, here in 1865 in September, the laying of the cornerstone, and there's a picture of the cornerstone. Cornerstone of the Roman Catholic Church of the city was laid on Sunday last with appropriate ceremonies by Right Reverend Thomas L. Grace, Bishop of the Diocese, assisted by Reverend Fathers Ravoux of St. Paul, Hirth of Hastings, Peace of the German settlement of this county. Sundry archives relative to the church were deposited therein. A large number of spectators were in attendance. Work on the church is progressing, and the walls are laid above the windows. So theoretically, there's something in that stone. That would be interesting. I don't think we should open it up soon, but that's always kind of fun. So Edward Niels wrote a lot of histories of Minnesota, and here's what he wrote in his book in 1881. In 1857 began the erection of a long, imposing structure facing Ramsey Street that the locals call the cathedral. And again, this is probably not the building we're in. It's probably the other one. The walls rose to about 15 feet when the financial panic of 1857 hit, followed by the Civil War in 61, during which time construction was halted. They had issues with that when building LeDuc House. The war kind of got in the way. In 1861, and somebody wrote 1865 next to it. So again, you have to kind of wiggle your facts. A new pastor arrived and made plans for the present structure. The walls under construction of the church were dismantled, and the materials were used for the construction of the present church. So the cathedral that was never built, they used a lot of the stone to start this one. What I'm not sure is that stone on the bottom or on the top? Regardless. The construction of the present church was broken in late June 65, 2-year contract construction, 45 by 100. Program was planned. for the building to cost $8,000. However, the building was not finished until 1869. It was dedicated in July 1869. The final cost was not recorded. So, again, kind of cool factoids here. The organ, and Erik and Sarah kind of figured out, I found this reference in the Pioneer Room, and they said, we can learn these songs. The picture that's up here in the center is taken from that perspective where the organ is coming down this way. And it's, to me, a 1970s picture. But anyway, the organ recital, a sacred concert, was given at the Church of the Guardian Angels on Tuesday evening to dedicate the new pipe organ. It was a crowning success. It was a musical treat of high order and pronounced one of the finest ever given in our city. And I'll skip over to Mr. D.A. Van Vleck, also from St. Paul, delighted the audience with the vocal solos, Calvary and the Holy City. His selections were well chosen, fully adapted to the wide range of voice. And on the other one, the formal opening of the new pipe organ, the Church of the Guardian Angels, on Tuesday evening was largely attended, and it kind of goes through everybody who was there. So these are major things that would be in the newspaper. So a little bit about the building. I worked at Historic Fort Snelling for a long time, and we had to learn a lot about construction of stone buildings, and that was really interesting to me. Locally made limestone. We see in these three pictures a lot of arches. The one in the center is back. Yes, it's back over this way. If you go way in the back of the building, you can see it up there, that little window. Little arch there, big arch just behind it, which actually is probably right over here. The arch is in the tower. And what they would end up doing for this is they had lots of wooden scaffolding to get this stuff up, pulleys, but they would build sort of a form around with an arch in it out of wood and then start stacking the stones. And there's always what's called a keystone in the center. And once, theoretically, the Romans came up with this, but theoretically, once that keystone's in place, everything holds. They did use not what we know as cement today, but they would make a type of cement out of sand, quicklime, which is burnt limestone, that would turn into a powder, and then water. And there was different ratios for that. All right, so kind of cool to see these things. 1930, the Diamond Jubilee, and this was a big thing. This really brought our church and our community into the national scene in terms of the Catholics. Jubilee of Historic Guardian Angels Church to draw thousands. It was kind of like a big Catholic conference that was here, and that was in June of 1930. There are different remodelings that were going on, and here's some stuff out of the newspaper. This, Cindy, is the same paper that we had at the house, but this is a Pioneer Room copy. Huge remodel in 1940 under Reverend Nolan. And I'm going to try to read this. New doors graced the front of the church. Refinished plaques from the previous doors were affixed to the new ones. Father Johnny Mitchell, pastor of Guardian Angels, stands in front of the step leading to the church besides one of the rustic new gas lights. The center one, the church interior before and after remodeling. And I'll show you more pictures of this later. In the top picture, note the removal of the old altars and the substitution of new liturgical high altars with new simple side altars. Old pews remain but were refinished. And I'm still not sure where the old pews are. We talked about that yesterday. The new altar is strictly liturgical. It's a lower picture in a simple design. And the altar rail is hand-wrought iron. The floor of the sanctuary is hardwood in parquet design. And then over by the tower, and this again is always interesting to me, the towers have changed. It's iconic, you know. You could see these towers from different distances, and we'll talk more about where that cross went later. The church tower before and after remodeling, and the one off to the left is before remodeling, and the one off to the right. The remodeling was planned and accomplished by the parish in 1940 under the leadership of Reverend Nolan, church pastor who felt something should be done with the church. Floor joists were rotted at the sills, causing aisles to creak and settle unevenly. Plaster was cracked, window sash sagged in their warped frames. The stamped metal ceiling showed indications of rust and disintegration, and the bell timbers in the badly leaking belfry were decomposing to a point of dangerous structural weakness. So, at that point, by 1940, they're having a lot of issues with the building. Keep in mind the walls are solid. And what's really amazing to me is when you go down by the Vermilion Falls and take a walk over the gorge, and you go down to the Ramsey Mill, which is that burned out mill that burned out in the 1890s, those walls still stand. You know, I mean, they're not all there, but this construction is really, and I think churches are meant to stand for a long time. So in the hallway, there on those tables are some interesting documents, some primary sources that we had in the Pioneer Room, and I thought these are really interesting. This first one off to the left, it's an application to procure wine for sacramental purposes and like religious rites. And it is from 1927. And the next one is the Articles of Incorporation. I highlighted some things there. They're kind of hard to see, but that's from 1882. All right, some other things here. This was interesting to me. This letter off to the side is telling a little bit about stuff. The Archbishop Ireland Educational Fund, and it's to Reverend McGinnis from his secretary. Dear Father McGinnis, we're in receipt of a letter from W.J. Riley, your parish, asking to have a pledge of $300 to the educational fund canceled. He gives his reason, the fact he's had 8 children to educate and has to pay board for these he is sending to high school and board and tuition for the one being sent to normal. And a normal school is set up for teachers. So there's one in River Falls, but I don't know which one they mean. The balance of this pledge is $300. Now, of course, as you probably know, we hate to cancel pledges of such a large amount, or any account for that matter, especially when no apparent effort's been made to make a payment. $300 does not have to be paid at one time. We're still accepting part payments with pleasure, or at least last resort, we could consider reducing the amount. If you'll investigate this matter for us and advise. And in pencil, somebody said they advised him to cancel this debt. So, a couple other receipts for different things, and these are canceled bank checks from 1923. Remember those? And they'd run them through, and they'd send them back to you in an envelope. And, material list for the school on the left. Again, there's no date on that, but includes blackboards, tile work, painting, installation from 1914. Two of these, this middle document is all in Latin. Sarah. Where did Sarah go? All right, let's see here. Hastings reads. I'm gonna do some bad things here. Oh my God, tractor trailer. Sarah? All right, I'm going to start pressing buttons. Okay. I timed out. Sorry. Hope Cindy's going to come help me. It just popped off. Okay, good. Now I'll remember that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Okay. All right. All right. Yes. See if you can get it to work up there. That's the problem with the old one. It's okay. I'll muddle. Oh, it does. You want to just stand up here and do that? Yeah. My wife, Cindy.
So you just touch it.
Okay.
And I don't think you can hold. Well, I don't.
Okay.
Be gentle.
I'll try. All right. All right. Anyway, this one's in Latin. It says something to do with the stations and another finance report from 1914. So Heidi helped me with this one. This particular document, Hastings, Reverend John Mitchell, there's a board meeting, and they're making a motion to purchase for the sum of $29,000 a house located on property described as the follow. The house to be used for a convent for the Sisters of Guardian Angel Parish in Hastings. So Heidi, is that the particular house that you talked about? Okay, St. Teresa's Convent south of the church. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, and see, I didn't grow up here, so thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's, all right. A few more 1952 renovation receipts for different things. Kind of fun to look at that, see what they spent. And Travis brought me up to the attic, and that was a huge, huge deal last fall. I love crawling around in old buildings. And again, some of the construction here. So the one in the center, this is above the tower, and the tower now has copper involved in it. And when copper, it's not rusting, but it's the same process. It turns green. It's verdigris, and you can see that coming down. And plus, there's an arch just below it. Also, in this one, and now we're going to test this. So right here and right here, kind of hard to see, there's like chisel marks up that stone. So limestone, when it comes out of the ground, it's softer than it's dried for a while. But they would take chisels and chisel holes through there, and then sometimes put gunpowder and light it, and the rock would split, or they would just put pry bars and split it. So you can see some of that, again, right up there. And here we see some more arches, and again, these stones that hold the archway. And this, I love this, right above us in the back, there's sort of a, like an umbrella-shaped spot. All these pieces come up at one spot to hold it up and support it. All right? Very cool to get up there and look around. Probably it's not something most of us are going to do, and I had my problems with it too. At Fort Snelling, we had to learn about where the limestone came from. Nobody ever asked me that in 30 years of working there. But locally quarried Platteville limestone, and there's limestone everywhere underneath us. Where the quarries were, we're not sure. I did read a reference this morning that some of them might have been quarried just below the building, but I don't know for sure. You really have to dig deeper sometimes. But one thing I want to note, to point out, one of my favorite Scrabble words is coins, Q-U-O-I-N-S. And so they would take stones, large stones, think of Legos, and when you build Legos, you sometimes one, and they would lock together like this. And Fort Snelling has this, Leduc House has this, the other limestone building. So again, kind of hard to see, but right up along this corner, you get a lot of rubble here, smaller, rougher pieces, but those lock everything together. Same thing with the windows outside. These are one of these windows right over here. There's like small, large, small, large. That's just because it looks cool. And then the lintel there for the sill, and the regular limestone and odd pieces. An interesting thing about Leduc's house, when you stand in the front, all the limestone looks beautiful. It's all not exact. It's not made exactly the same size, but really nice pieces, all chiseled up, and stone masons would do that. In the back, it looks like they just used the rubble. In our church, it's a little rubble everywhere. There's not really a clean facade, but it doesn't matter. Here's a couple of things that I really enjoy. So these stars in the center, these are tie bars. They're great big metal bolts that run through the building. You'll see this around town in limestone buildings. And because before structural steel, when you had limestone that came up this far, you had to have something to kind of hold it together. And sometimes it'd be a turnbuckle in there, and sometimes not. But down along the river on First Street, the building's still there from the 1850s, Star Iron Works. It's a machine shop now, but it was a foundry where they would pour molten iron into sand cast pieces and make these stars. Sometimes it looked more like a big donut or like a frisbee, but this would be used to hold the buildings up. So did these stars come from our spot here? Probably, but I don't know for sure. The other thing, too, I really enjoyed, and I not saw this at Fort Snelling, but here, when you go upstairs, you see these rocks sticking out in some of the corners, and I started thinking, what were those there for? And I'm going to guess, and they were in every corner, that when they were building scaffolding to keep the stonemasons bringing the stone up, they probably ran boards between those things and then took them out afterwards. And this is kind of hard to see, too. Like right about here, this is way at the roof, the stone changes, the color changes, and the shape starts to change. And so probably they got that stone from a different quarry towards the end of the construction, or I'm making this up, did they use the stone that they started the first church with? I don't know. And we might not ever know, but it's just interesting. You sit and stare at these walls for a while, and they start to talk to you, but you don't always know what they're saying. I love going in old attics, and the one in the center is actually part of the frame that holds the bell up. And this one on this side, you can see the roof arches. This piece of wood right here, that was a tree with the bark still on it. It's not doing anything up there, but it's not coming out. So for whatever reason they had that in there, they just left it up there, okay? And then you see, some insulation and some piping, but over here you see where these pieces of wood come together here too. This is called mortise and tenon. So the piece coming in at an angle has a tongue on it. That's the mortise. No, that's the tenon, my fault. And then the part over here, there's a gap in there. So you start working with chisels and saws, and then you fit one piece in the other. Barns were made the same way with mortise and, tenon. And then they would hammer in these wood plugs to hold it. And the thing about a square peg and a round hole, I learned this at Fort Snelling. When they did that, they didn't use a perfectly round dowel piece to tie these together. They had iron and nails, but those rust and they start loosening up after a while. But the wood, if you took the wood and made a peg out of it and shaved little corners on, think of a stop sign, and then hammered it in that way and then sawed it off, that's going to hold really tight. And these things are still tight after all that time. All right, here a little bit about Joseph Cretin. He was born in France and came over here in the 1820s. He ministered to the Native Americans in the diocese of Dubuque, that would be Iowa, which is now included, at what time that was now Minnesota, well, it wasn't a territory at that time. Appointed bishop of the newly formed diocese of St. Paul, ordained the first bishop in 1851. So Cretin came here. He built 2 cathedrals during his time in St. Paul, hospitals, schools, established cemeteries, desired to colonize the area with Catholics. He endeavored to provide the growth of his diocese by bringing Catholic immigrants from European countries to the fertile plains of Minnesota. An ardent missionary spirit, he continued to minister to the Native Americans and traveled through the vast extent of the diocese. Now, notice that both these gentlemen were from France. And when they came over, the fur trade at that time, before this, was run by the French for a while, then the British, but the British always had French employees. Then the American government came in. That's when Fort Snelling was built. But all the fur traders, including Sibley's people, Sibley's from Michigan, but they're all French Canadians. And so this is, you want the fur traders to be happy and behave themselves. You bring a priest in and start churches. So here's Augustine Ravoux, ordained in 1840, a minister to the frontiersmen at Prairie du Chien. And Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin is a cool old historic town on the river. Just like St. Paul, there's 2 rivers that come together. They're the Wisconsin and the Mississippi. Here, the St. Croix of the Mississippi. Fort Snelling, the Minnesota, the Mississippi kind of come together. So these are like highway intersections. So he was really involved down there. He learned different Sioux languages, taught catechism. He wrote a book in Dakota. And this was interesting to me. The indigenous people had great respect for him. All but 5 of the 38 Native Americans condemned to be hanged for leading an uprising in 62 chose him to prepare for that death. So that's a whole other story, is the Dakota War. He's the only priest in Minnesota from 1844 to 51. When Joseph Cretin arrived, in those years, the Catholics required most of his time. He did visit the Sioux villages occasionally. In 1850, the Diocese of St. Paul was created. Chiefly through his efforts, the land that he acquired became the basis of its material prosperity. Vicar General, and then I cut some of that off, so I don't know when he declined anymore. But these are the 2 main characters that got things going in our part of Minnesota. Here again is from Neal's History of Dakota County, 1881. I'm going to run through this. History of Guardian Angels Church. In May 27th, 1857, Block 30 of the city of Hastings was donated to the Catholic Church by Sibley Bailey. The Catholics of Point Douglas and Hastings petitioned Bishop Cretin, who was the first bishop of St. Paul, for a church. In accordance, the bishop sent a raft of lumber to Hastings. Lumber at that time was scarce, and some early settlers appropriated the raft for their own use to build shanties. The bishop, not being discouraged, sent another raft, and a church 30 by 50 was built. And again, that would be that one right there. The feast, on the bishop being discouraged was, all right. The feast being according to the Roman Catholics of the 6th of October, Father McMahon was sent to take charge of the parish till 1859 and was removed, and Reverend Murray was sent to the place. Again, he was a fixer. He got things done. Remained in charge till 1860 and then returned to Stillwater in his old parish. Father Francis Perth was next priest under his pastorate. The present church was built in 65. The building was commenced in a building of stone being 45 by 100. A sanctuary of 25 by 30 in a lot 1, block 30 was completed in 1868. Father Hirth returned to France. Yada, yada. The old church is now used for a school. In 1868, a residence for the priest was built to join the church, and about a year after was destroyed by fire. 1875, a new one erected where it stands now. And again, this was written in the 1880s. All right, in June 1930, Father McGinnis published the history of the parish on the occasion of the Diamond Jubilee of the parish, giving the complete history of the church. So I had showed that before. There's a copy of it out there. That was a really interesting thing to read. All right, so steeples. This is always interesting to me. The steeple is an icon. And so again, this is from the 1867 map. This is one that we see in old postcards. And indeed, that might be the original one. It doesn't quite look like this, but I don't know, because in 1867, that steeple might not have been finished. But it just could have been drawn there if he sat and talked to the priests about what their plans were. I couldn't say. Here's the Diamond Jubilee, and you can kind of see the steeple right there. It's got the wedding cake type of thing up there. And then today, with the absence of the cross, we've got a copper top on that. And it was my understanding when I talked to Sarah that the cross is already starting to list to one side, tipping over, and they eventually got to a point where the city came and said, we should take this down. It's going to be a big problem. And the fire department came and took it down. And Travis says it's somewhere. Okay, he said they got it somewhere, but I don't know. Okay, very, very cool though. All right, so this is something from the 1860s. The interior of the Church of the Guardian Angels now presents a beautiful appearance. The new memorial windows having put in, and the walls and ceiling handsomely frescoed with a lovely oil painting, back of the main altar, a guardian angel over a boy protecting a child from a snake. Adolph Rank of St. Paul was a contractor. So it's kind of hard to see this. I was going to put a close-up in, but I might not have. But there's an angel guarding a little boy. This is the original painting. Okay, where are they now? Who knows? There's a lot of renovations. It was painted on the wall. It might still be back there someplace. I don't know. All right, so here's some different views, again, mostly taken from up there. Here's the one that we just looked at. Here's one of the renovations. And then a lot of churches, they try to simplify things, open things up at one point. This was not all that long ago. So different views of what we have behind us. Again, a few more. Okay, I love this one with the wedding over here. That's really, really a cool one. Don't know who it is. Here is probably communion or another one of the sacraments was going on there. All right, and then there was a photographer by the last name of Hill. Is Sarah in here now, or is she still hiding? Oh my gosh, what's the photographer that blended the pictures? Yes, and these are really fun because he took, it's like then and now, here's the old postcard, here's what it looks like now with this built on. Same thing with here and here, okay? Really kind of fun. There's a concert going on, okay? I'm excited about the concert on Saturday, Brass Lassies, and I'm really excited that tomorrow they're having beer here, and we're going to sing religious songs, okay? You know, my favorite part of the Bible, trust me, is when Jesus and the wine of Cana, you know. Think of if he hadn't put that in there. All right, a nice old photograph of the pews, probably 1930s, 20s, 40s. It's hard for me to know. Not quite sure where the original pews went. Travis and I were talking about that yesterday. Somebody was really sweet. We're getting some things ready, and this woman comes in yesterday and says, my husband, he passed away, and we've got this pew. It was one of the pews from the church, one of the more recent ones. And they had a long one. They took it in half and fixed it up, and there's still a kneeler in there. It's in the hallway right now. She just looked for a home for it, and it was just a perfect thing. Oh, she was just filled with emotion because she could find a place where this thing would be home again. Okay. Okay. Yep. All right, thank you. All right. Again, renovations in 1930, 1940, 1950, and Hill had blended these pictures, which I really enjoy that kind of thing, that before and after. Let's talk about cemeteries. Is this when the next one comes, Sarah, or just after? Yes, sing the songs for me. This is a break we talked about.
Yeah, sorry. Different height than Sarah. Slightly. When Spencer sent us some of the clips of newspapers that he was looking at, of course, there were the two regarding the organ concert for a pipe organ. Being my mother's son, I'm like, well, what happened to the pipe organ? But there were two songs listed in that program, and we'd been looking at a number of different options, Civil War songs, period songs, and I went, aha, let's sing those. So the two titles that were mentioned was a hymn written a long time ago called At Calvary that, Sarah, you said you knew.
Yeah, I can remember singing it in church. Yeah.
And then the other one is a title called The Holy City, which is, there are a number of texts with that title, but this one's probably the most famous. What did you call it? You said it was a 19th, one's a hymn and this one is a 19th.
This is like a 19th century art song.
Yeah.
So if any of you know the Lord's Prayer, Our Father.
Yeah. Similar.
It's like very grandiose. So this reminded me a lot of it. It's a journey. It is a big journey. So we're going to just do one verse of At Calvary because it is a strophic hymn. But the Holy City is.
You can't cut.
We can't cut.
No.
It's just it is what it is. So.
All right.
And Eric's going to try.
I'm going to try and sing, yeah. Years I spent in vanity and pride, caring not my Lord was crucified, knowing not it was for me he died on Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace was free. Pardon there was multiplied for me. There my burdened soul found liberty at Calvary. Can't quite see it. All right. And by a gentleman who wrote under the name Stephen Adams to a text by F.E. Weatherly, published way before this date says. This one says 42, but this was an 1880s song, so it was very new and newly popular when that original pipe organ was dedicated. Last night I lay a-sleeping, there came a dream so fair. I stood in old Jerusalem, beside the temple there. I heard the children singing, and ever as they sang, methought the voice of angels from heaven in answer my dream was changed. The streets no longer rang. Hushed with the glad hosannas, the little children sang. The sun grew dark with mystery. The morn was cold and chill as the shadow of a cross arose upon a lonely hill, and the shadow of a cross arose upon a lonely hill. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, hark how the angels sing. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna to your King. And once again the scene was changed. Now earth there seemed to be. I saw the holy city beside the tideless sea. The light of God was on its streets. The gates were open wide, and all who would might enter, and no one was denied. No need of moon or stars by night, or sun to shine by day. It was the new Jerusalem that would not pass away. It was the new Jerusalem that would not pass away. Jerusalem, sing, for the night is o'er. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna forevermore. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna The reviews in the original dedication were glowing, so I hope I did the tenor proud.
No, it's okay to leave, but there's more. Oops, we're not done. What's that? Oh, she does. My mom, who was a teacher, asked Cindy to tell me to slow down. Cindy told me this morning. Okay, cemeteries. Guardian Angels had 4 different cemeteries over the years. The first one was on the other side of the river. We're not quite sure where it was. The second one, this is McNamara's Mound. And again, if you're from Hastings, you might be familiar south of town. There are some cone-shaped mounds out there. When I first moved to town, some of my students said, oh, these are Indian burial mounds. And for years, I had students say, oh, yeah, my grandpa told me they're burial mounds. I did a lot of research, found no evidence of that. Talked to Mark Zuzik, who was a science teacher. He told me they were eskers, which means when the glaciers were melting, they would leave these mounds different places. But regardless, years ago at the library, I found a book on local cemeteries. It said there's a cemetery in those woods. So I knocked on the door one day and said, I want to come look for Morels. He said, go right ahead. That's not our property. It still belongs to the Archdiocese. But McNamara's Mound, and here's some graves that are in there. Shortly after the founding of the Guardian Angels Parish, a temporary burial place was used across the river in Washington County. Quite a few persons were interned there in the Platte. There in 1857, John Kelly donated a tract of 5 acres on one side of his farm to the mounds in Martian. That's what we're looking at here. On the present McNamara farm, the cemetery was used exclusively for about 6 years with occasional burials. In later years, many of the bodies with gravestones are still there. About 1862, another site was donated by the Collins family at Bellwood. This is the Bellwood Cemetery, for the use of parishioners there. And at Hastings, a survey was then made and recorded in 1874. The tract contained 5 acres. The first burial was that of Stephen Collins. Up to 1880, 440 burials had been taken place. Bellwood continued to be the official burial ground of the parish up to 1889, when a new tract of land on the Cannon Falls Road, which is Highway 61, they call it the Cannon Falls Road, at the outskirts of town, was purchased from Samuel Moore and is now the official cemetery. So, if you crawl around in McNamara's Mound in the spring looking for morels, you're going to find some stones in there. Some are just leaning against the trees. There, it's been a long time since I've been in there. There and at Bellwood, south of town on 61, about 210, a lot of those graves say born in Ireland, born in Dublin, from Killarney, things like that. So some of those people were, well, all those people are probably really proud of their past, and some to the point where they made sure it's on their stone. Again, on the, here we go. This is one of my pictures not that long ago of McNamara's Mound. That one here is so symmetrical. I'm sure Native people went up there and did stuff, but was not a burial mound. It's far from the river, other things. And this one here is Bellwood in the wintertime, and I went in there. I've been in there quite a bit. This is actually Henry Bailey's grave. He was a veteran, died at Nashville, but there's other graves in there too. And here's our present one right here. That's not far, it's south end of town near the car dealerships. And I didn't go in there and look. It was snowing out, but here's the very Reverend William Mertz, born in 1922 in St. Paul, ordained in 1947 in St. Paul, pastor of the Church of Guardian Angels in Hastings, Minnesota from February 78 to July 87. Colonel in the U.S. Army, died 2003. May he rest in peace. So a lot of you remember Mertz. Thought that was kind of a fun one to find. These are just some primary sources, all from the 1930s, about the Guardian Angels Cemetery at the south end of town. They're planning to widen the road, and the negotiation between the DOT, the state, and the church about that. Behind the scenes tour with Travis, again up in the attic. We went climbing all the way up there, some really steep ladders with square nails in them. I was a little hesitant, but I'm probably gutsier than I should be. But here he is there up by the bell. You can see the in that center picture, kind of those vents. We're in the tower there, not at the very top yet. And again, some of the arches, arch here, a little bit of an arch here, arches here, and the Morrison tenant construction. Oh, here's some ductwork. So you got a little bit of modern in it with the antique. Really cool to see those construction methods. And there are pieces of the beams up there that some still have bark on them because they thought, well, they're never going to be seen, so what difference does it make? I thought this was interesting. In the peak over here, the stone was smaller rubble, and all of a sudden they used heavier pieces on the top. There's got to be a point to that. Again, those stepping stones in some of the corners for maybe scaffolding. And here's a few pieces that were burnt. So there must have been some sort of fire. I found no record of that up there. The bell is really interesting. The bell that's up there now in this picture is not the original one. The original one had developed a crack and was replaced. This bell says 1889 on it, I think. And the both of the other sides, I mean, that ladder goes up to the out, but these round pieces, it's that round thing that helps the bell. It's attached to the yoke. That's the metal piece above the bell. Really cool to find old bells. And we were talking to a gentleman here in town that knows a lot about the history of bells, and we have to get him to do a talk sometime. The original bell was made in the 1870s. And these are pictures of the bell that are in there. Just kind of cool pictures, I don't know. So I wanted to get all the way to the top and outside. Don't tell my mom I did this. Travis, of course, he climbs up there, and I hand him my camera and had him take pictures of 360, and I'm like, I could probably get out this little trapdoor, but I'm never going to get back in again. So I left it at that. It was really windy. It was really fun to do that. Again, you see the copper, the verdigris, the green. Okay, kind of to wrap it up, the angels in our lives. So we are guardian angels, and I'm going to do a talk sometime for Mo McNeary about guardian angels and their history and why they're important. There are many, many cultures that have these, not just Christians. The three that we have are Gabriel, Raphael, and Michael. Michael is back. You can't really see him from the inside. You can see two of them from the inside. The other one is kind of in that room there. And so guardian angels in our lives. And why do we pick guardian angels? Well, first of all, Michael, who's an archangel, means who is as God. He's one of the main angels. His name is a battle cry, both shield and weapon in the struggle against the enemy. And we'll look at images in a minute. St. Raphael, archangel, means divine healer, a friend of the walkers and the doctor of the sick, and both physically and spiritually. And St. Gabriel, archangel, means strength of God, one of the most important missions, announcing the Virgin Mary that she would be the mother of the Messiah. And I found this prayer to the angels. This is a painting by Rembrandt I thought was interesting. It didn't really tell you who the angels were, but we know that they're those three. Heavenly King, you've given us archangels to assist us during our pilgrimage on earth. St. Michael is our protector. I asked him to come to my aid, fight for all my loved ones, and protect us from danger. St. Gabriel is a messenger of the good news. I asked him to help me clearly hear your voice and teach me the truth. St. Raphael is a healing angel. I asked him to take my need for healing, and that everyone I know lift it up to your throne of grace and deliver us back to the gift of recovery. Help us, O Lord, to realize more fully the reality of archangels and desire to serve us. Holy angels, pray for us. Amen. So, in terms of Christianity, the New Testament names only two archangels, Michael and Gabriel, but Raphael is associated with them because of the healing was identified with the unnamed angel of John 5:4. So again, in John 5:4, one of these angels doesn't have a name, and they disassociate that. It makes sense. They use logic. He became identified with the unnamed angel who periodically stirred the pool of Bethesda, and that he went down first into the pond after the motion of the water was made whole of whoever's infirmity he lay under. So the Catholic Church accordingly links Raphael with Michael and Gabriel. And these are early Christian images. Well, Rembrandt's pretty new in the big picture. So here's Michael, and I put in some different pictures I found. I always like to find what's the earliest image of something you can find. And that one on the left here, it's a 9th century image. And the one in the middle, it's Mikhail, and it's all in Arabic. That is Islam. And Islam is one of the monotheistic religions. There's a lot of parallels, a lot of the same people in the Quran that are in the Old Testament, etc. There are angels in lots of other cultures too. Almost all of them have wings. Here's Gabriel. And again, I like this one in the middle here, fresco from a cathedral in Cyrus in the 14th century. And then the next one, Muhammad, receiving his first revelation from Gabriel, and that painting is from 1307 AD, very, very old. So always, what are our images, and where do we get these ideas of what angels look like? Here's St. Raphael and the Archangel Israfil. It's Raphael. Egypt or Syria right over here. Oops, there it is. And that one is from the late 14th or early 15th century. And the Archangel Raphael and Tobias is from 1512. Judaism, Christianity, Muslim, all three monotheistic religions have angels, and many other cultures do. I just like looking at old paintings and photographs. So, this one is always, if you think back when you were a kid and the lessons you remember from the Bible, this has always been one of mine. And then when I was a teenager, I questioned it. I went to a Catholic high school. But after completing his required week of ministry, Zacharias returns to his home, and his wife Elizabeth conceives. After she has completed 5 months of her pregnancy, this is from Luke, Gabriel appears again, now to Mary, to announce the birth of Jesus. So from Luke, and in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel came unto her and said, Hail, thou art highly favored, the Lord is with thee, blessed art thou women. And when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and cast her in mind of what manner of salutation this should be. And the angel said to her, unto her, Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God. So, this one over here is called The Annunciation by Henry Tanner, 1898, fairly recent. This one here, Gabriel announcing the Incarnation. Fra Angelico, about 1440. It's in the convent of St. Marco. And then here's Da Vinci on the bottom, the Annunciation, 1472 to 1475. So different images of the same thing that's happening. Guardian Angels today is very much alive as a community gathering space. And, there's a Guardian Angel. I like that one. Thanks to both Sarah and Travis for making this all happen.
We debated a number of angel-related hymns, and there's really one that comes to mind easily, and you probably already know the words if you're in this room. It's an old French Noel that we know as Angels We Have Heard on High. One verse. The first verse, yes.
Please sing along. Guess what? The first word is what?
Angels.
You're halfway there.
Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis in excelsis Oh, look at you good Minnesotans.
So I probably went over the time limit for the coffee concert, but I'll be outside to answer any questions. But does Heidi have something going today?
Yes, Heidi Langfeld is giving some wafting tours today following
of the neighborhood historic.
Heidi Langenfeld is giving a walking tour following this. So if you would like to go, I guess meet her out here. And then also the Cycling Without Age Trishaws, did I pronounce that right, are also here if people would like some rides. We're going to finish with a Ashokan farewell. Lower this a little bit. But before we do that, just letting you know that we have something every night this week. So tomorrow, I think Spence mentioned, we have hops and hymns. So if you want to get more hymns under your belt while drinking beer, cider, we will have non-alcoholic beverages available as well. So that starts at 7. I think there will be some sheets that you can read off of. Thursday night, we're having an ecumenical service with Father Bill Murtaugh and Pastor Paris Pash. And so Thursday night, 7 p.m. It's called A Night of Peace and Reconciliation. And then Friday night is an open mic night. There's still plenty of room available, all ages, all stages, music, poetry, dance, if you can figure that out on the stage. And if you don't want to participate, you can certainly come to spectate, please. Be a spectator. And then Saturday night is one of our season concerts. I almost said coffee concert. Season concert with Brass Lassie. It's an Irish band. And Jan's School of Dance is bringing the Irish Superclog dancers to perform at intermission. We're going to try and figure out where to put them. But and then just looking ahead to May, our next coffee concert is May 6th. It's a reschedule from January. R2 Duo is a cello piano duo, and so they're coming to perform. So that's May 6th, 10:30 a.m. So I hope to see you all back for that. And then our final season concert is May 17th with Jenny Kluken, who is a jazz marimba player, and she's bringing her combo. So if you've never heard jazz marimba, now is the time. So. All right, we will play as you guys exit. You can certainly stay and listen, and then I will be out there if you want to buy a T-shirt or buy Brass Lassie tickets or so. But feel free to get up and leave if you need to. So thank you so much.
Amen.